Hello students, welcome back to online lectures of Ignited Minds. Students, so this is another lecture of environment and ecology. As we know, in the last lecture we talked about the ecological pyramids, in which we saw basically how three ecological pyramids are determined and shaped in accordance with the different ecosystems. Like we have the grassland ecosystem, we have the forest ecosystem, we have the pond ecosystem, parasitic food chain, and how different, whether it be whether it be the biomass or whether it be the energy, how that flows and how this ecological pyramid takes a particular shape, whether upright or inverted. That's basically determined by that particular ecosystem. So in today's topic, it's ecological niche. Ecological niche. Sometimes it's pronounced as ecological niche, sometimes it's pronounced as ecological niche. So what is this niche? What is the difference between habitat क्या होता है और एक niche में क्या फर्क है? It was Joseph Grinnell in 1917 who gave this concept, who postulated this concept of ecological niche. He said its niche is basically the sum total. It's the sum total of habitat requirements for a species that allows a species to survive and to reproduce. पहली condition, पहली बात यही बोली. It's a niche is basically a sum total of habitat requirements. Sum total of habitat requirements. Now यहाँ पे habitat जो आ रहा है, habitat is a broader concept. This habitat is generally a broader concept, while as niche can be it occupies a smaller section of that, smaller portion or smaller segment of that ecospace, which provides very essential or the prerequisite conditions for any species to survive. ठीक है, अब ये जो ecological niche होता है, basically it's simply we can say the area of the habitat which now provides very essential conditions for an organism to survive and to the reproduce. And this position of an status or the position of the, or that status of an organism in his ecosystem is dependent upon his behavior and relationship with the other organisms. अब ये perfect conditions जब एक organism के लिए होंगी, जब उसके लिए perfect conditions availability होंगी, जब उसके लिए perfect abiotic factors available होंगे, जब उसके लिए वैसी requirements होगी कि वो survive कर सके और वो reproduce कर सके. Now this in turn depends upon abiotic factors, and which themselves depend upon basically how there might be the availability of resources and how much the competitors are there. अगर resource कम है, competitors बहुत ज़्यादा है, तो there would be the problem for that organism. He will fall himself as a prey. So ecological niche describes how an organism responds here. Responds to what? Responds to the distribution of resources. Resources कैसे है? And basically competitors कितने हैं? अगर competitors ज़्यादा है, अगर competitors कम है, the organisms can multiply in number. ठीक है? If there are organisms, if the competitors are less and resources are abundant, that organism or that particular species has a perfect niche at that time. So they can multiply in number, and if the resources are very scarce, so access to resources is now we can say it becomes a limiting factor, because many competitors would be thriving for that very scarce resource, and ultimately what will happen? Predator will itself fall as a prey. So habitat is a broader concept, we can say, and this ecological niche, this becomes a smaller or a specific segment of that particular ecosystem, which provides the very essential requirements for that organism to survive. And if we talk about what are these requirements are nothing, just the availability of these abiotic factors, यानी कि उसके जो खाने की जो requirements, कुछ resources है, वो उसको perfectly मिल रहे हैं, तब जाके वो उसका एक perfect ecological niche बनेगा. जबकि habitat में every organism, there are a lot of organisms living together, abundance of resources, everyone gets a perfect educate of supported by the abiotic factors, plentiful of sunshine, plentiful of resources, plentiful of food available. But niche, this is determined by limiting factors. This is determined by abiotic factors, availability of nutrients or the resources, and this is also determined by the number of competitors. And again that example, if there are resources very scarce, there would be a competition among the competitors for that particular resource. So that organism, basically that organism falls as a prey itself. And even there are resources, and if there are resources which are much more in number and competitors are very less, so ecological niche is perfect for that organism, and they grow or they multiply in number. So this concept was simply given by Joseph Grinnell. This concept was given by Joseph Grinnell in 1917, where he said this ecological niche is simply the sum total of habitat requirements for a species, so that that species allowed to persist and to survive and to reproduce happily or in a very proper manner without the threat of competitions. Now if we talk about Hutchinson came in 1957, and Hutchinson popularized this concept of ecological niche. Hutchinson came in 1957, and he popularized. He said no, he said yes, it's right that niche, it defines that how a particular organism responds to the factors or abiotic factors, and resources available, and these resources itself determine how the organism will live in that particular area or that particular ecosystem. So ecological niche is a perfect sum total habitat. Magar Hutchinson said, he said that this concept is much more complex. This concept, he said, it's a multidimensional concept, or he said it's a hypervolume concept. He said there are many factors associated. He said if you are talking about resources, then talk about the detailed how, like if there's a plant, any plant species ke liye bahut sare resources, like there might be the range of sunlight, like there might be the range of particular temperature, like precipitation कितना चाहिए उसको availability of nutrients कितने हैं, उसको competitors कितने हैं, उसके पास we can say how it is functioning, उसको कितनी eco space चाहिए. So it's a hyper volume, not one volume, not exactly it's not simply this, we can say the availability of resource. You have to say it's a multi-dimensional approach, a hypervolume approach, whereby many factors, different factors determine the particular niche of that organism. If you talk about the plant, the niche of a plant is determined by many factors, or like the range of a temperature a particular plant reads, because we know there are certain plants whose active growth is only possible when the temperature is like in range between 15 or 17 or 18. So he said niche is determined when there would be particular availability, good availability of resources, and good availability of particular type of multi-dimensional approach है ये, जहाँ पे क्या क्या चाहिए उसको डिटेल में हम उसको देखते हैं. Multi-dimensional approach like the range of a temperature, availability of nutrients, कुछ nutrients चाहिए कुछ plants को, that are very essential, they are very essential. So वो nutrients क्या है, उनकी range क्या है, क्या क्या macro resources nutrients चाहिए उसको, and what are the range of, we can say the temperature, how much sunshine it needs, precipitation, water कितनी चाहिए उसको, frost free days कितने चाहिए उसको. So niche of a plant are many. So this is a hyper volume, ठीक है. So concept तो वही है, requirements क्या क्या चाहिए उसको. But Hutchinson said he basically popularized the concept of ecological niche. इसको थोड़ा और उसने इसको concept को बढ़ा के बोला. He said it's not only simply this sum total of habitat. You have to say different hyper volume की तरह जाओ और tell us different things which determine or which are a perfect complex set of resources in order that for that organism to grow and to persist and to reproduce. So as short, this is ecological niche, which simply describes how an organism responds to the distribution of resources and the competitors, which in turn is determined itself by the availability of resources. ठीक है. If the organism has to grow in a number, niche should be perfect, like there should be so many of the resources available and less competition available, यानी कि less competitors. And now if the competition is much more, अगर कंपटीशन काफी ज्यादा है और रिसोर्सेज बहुत कम है, वो ऑर्गेनिज्म के लिए इकोलॉजिकल नीश कंडीशंस परफेक्ट नहीं है. इट इज नॉट एबल टू प्रोड्यूस, इट्स नॉट एबल टू सर्वाइव एंड परसिस्ट. सो दिस इज अ डिफरेंस बिटवीन niche is a, we can say, a simpler niche is a specific part of the ecosystem, and while as habitat is a broader concept where many organisms can live together. So thank you students, God bless you.